Hello, guys. I'm writing this because, quite frankly, I don't really know how else to process what's been going on in my life. I never thought I'd end up here, sharing my story with strangers, but I need some outside perspective because, honestly, I'm still reeling. Let me set the scene. My name's Michael, and until recently, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. My wife, Jessica, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. She's everything you would expect from someone who has their shit together: smart, driven, and beautiful. She's the kind of person who walks into a room and everyone notices. It's not just her looks, though she's stunning, but it's the way she carries herself with this effortless confidence. We have been married 6 years, no kids as yet, though we had talked about it. We have a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, and our lives look picture perfect on paper. She does marketing for a big firm downtown while I run my own landscaping business. We've always been supportive of each other's careers, or so I thought. Jessica has always been the star in our relationship, and I've been okay with that. I loved being the guy behind the scenes, cheering her on. Our friends used to call us the power couple. I never felt like I had to compete with her. I just loved her for who she was, or who I thought she was. But looking back, perhaps I ignored the cracks that were starting to show. It all started a few months ago. Jessica began staying late at work more frequently. At first, I didn't think much of it. Her job is demanding, and she's always been ambitious. But late nights turned into weekends, then business trips. Her phone, once always in sight, started staying on silent, face down, or tucked away in her bag. That wasn't like her. I brought it up one evening. Babe, you've been working so hard lately. Is everything okay at the office? I asked, trying to sound supportive but curious. She gave me a tight smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Yeah, everything's fine. We're just swamped with this new campaign. It's a big deal for the company. Her response made sense at the time, and I wanted to believe her. She's my wife, my partner. Why wouldn't I trust her? The thought of her lying to me never even crossed my mind. But then other changes crept in. She started dressing up more: new clothes, new perfume, always looking polished, as if she were heading to a photo shoot. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she just wanted to treat herself. Jessica has always been stylish. Still, she felt distant. Conversations grew shorter, her affection dwindled. When I kissed her goodnight, she'd mumble something about being tired and turn away. I started to question myself. Was I the problem? Maybe I wasn't doing enough to keep the spark alive. So I tried harder. I planned date nights, left little notes for her, and surprised her with her favorite snacks. She seemed to appreciate it, or at least she said she did, but something still felt off. Then came the first undeniable red flag. One evening, Jessica left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. I happened to walk by and noticed an email notification pop up. It was from someone named Daniel, and the subject line read, "Can't wait to see you again." I froze. Daniel? The name was familiar. He was more of an acquaintance than a close friend. We'd had beers a few times, but that was it. Why was he emailing my wife? And why did the subject line make my stomach drop? I didn't open the email, though I wanted to. Something stopped me. Maybe the fear of confirming what my gut was already screaming. Instead, I decided to wait, hoping for a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was nothing, or at least that's what I told myself. After seeing that email from Daniel, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried convincing myself I was overthinking it, but the suspicion was firmly planted and began growing, twisting everything Jessica did into another piece of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. That weekend, I decided to keep my eyes open. Jessica told me she had to work late on Saturday, again. Normally, I'd spend nights like that catching up on Netflix or tackling small projects around the house, but this time, I was restless. Something told me I needed to pay closer attention. Around 9 p.m., I found myself driving by her office. I know how that sounds, but I couldn't help myself. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, and the building was completely dark. Nobody was working late that night. When she came home around midnight, I didn't confront her. Instead, I asked casually, "How was work?" She gave me a tired smile and said, "Exhausting, but productive. We're making good progress on the campaign." Then, like clockwork, she went straight to the shower. as she always did after her supposed long nights at the office. As I lay in bed that night, everything replayed in my head. She lied to me. There was no other way to see it. But why? I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, but deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. During breakfast, I casually brought up Daniel. Hey, I haven't seen Daniel in a while. How's he doing? You talked to him lately? I asked, keeping my tone lightly. Jessica didn't flinch. She shrugged and said, Not really. I think he's been busy with work too. Oh, no reason. Just thought I'd invite him over for a beer sometime, I said, watching her closely. My eyes were on Miranda. She smiled, but it didn't feel right. It seemed forced, a little too rehearsed. Sure, and that'd be nice. Her reaction only deepened my suspicion. She was hiding something. I was sure of it. But I didn't press further. I kept my composure while my mind raced. If she was lying about her whereabouts and her connection to Daniel, I needed to find out the truth. I wasn't going to sit idly by while she spun more lies. That afternoon, I did something I never imagined I'd have to do in my marriage. I started digging. I felt sick as I started searching for the truth. It wasn't just the fear of betrayal, it was the possibility that the life I thought I had was built on lies. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them by doing nothing. I began with Jessica's social media. She rarely posted, but Daniel had liked almost every photo she'd uploaded over the past 6 months. When I checked his profile, I found something that made my stomach drop. A picture of 2 cocktails on a patio I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Great night." The post was from a night Jessica had told me she was working late. I stared at it for what felt like forever, connecting the dots. What I did next wasn't something I'm proud of, but I didn't know another way. The next morning, when Jessica left her phone charging on the counter as she grabbed her bag, I seized the moment. My hands trembled as I unlocked it and scrolled through her messages. Most conversations seemed ordinary. Until I found a thread with Daniel. Only it wasn't under his name. She had it saved as Dana. The messages shattered any hope I had left. Daniel, can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. Oh, Jessica, you're making me blush, lol. I miss you already. I couldn't read more. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. I slammed the phone down and paced the kitchen, my thoughts spiraling. She wasn't just cheating. She was cheating with someone I had considered a friend. The betrayal felt bottomless. When Jessica came home that evening, I tried to keep my composure. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed time to think, to plan, but every moment near her was agonizing. Every smile, every laugh felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Long day? She asked casually, sitting down at the table with me after dinner. Yeah, you could say that, I replied, barely looking at her. She didn't press. That surprised me. Maybe she was too caught up in her own lies to notice my mood, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Either way, it gave me the space I needed to strategize. That night, as I lay awake next to her, I made a decision. I wasn't going to just confront her. I was going to make her regret every lie, every betrayal. And Daniel, he wasn't walking away from this unscathed either. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them I could play too. But I wasn't planning to lose. The wheels were already turning in my head. After everything I uncovered, I knew I couldn't confront Jessica right away. I needed to play this carefully, to make both her and Daniel feel the full weight of their betrayal. If they thought I was clueless, it would only make what I had planned even more satisfying. The first step was to get close to Daniel. I called him up, keeping my tone casual. Hey man, it's been a while. You free to grab a beer this week? He hesitated, probably calculating if it was safe, before replying, yeah, sure. When were you thinking? I said, Friday night. Come over to my place. Jessica's working late again, so it'll just be us guys. There was another pause, but then he agreed. Perfect. I had a few days to set the stage. On Wednesday, Jessica claimed she'd be working late again. As soon as she left, I followed her. She wasn't at the office, but at a bar across town, sitting with Daniel at a corner table, leaning in close, laughing and touching. My blood boiled, but I kept my composure. Instead of confronting them, I snapped photos, Jessica leaning on his shoulder, Daniel brushing her hair back, their hands intertwined. It was disgusting, but it was exactly what I needed. When Jessica came home that night, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Sorry I'm late. The campaign is really kicking my ass." I forced a smile and replied, "No worries. You're doing great." It took every ounce of self-control not to confront her then and there. By Friday, everything was in place. When Daniel showed up at my house, he greeted me like nothing was wrong. Over a beer, I casually mentioned a big project for my landscaping business. It might be a good opportunity for us to collaborate. You interested? His eyes lit up as he said, "Yeah, man, sounds awesome. Let me know what you need." I smiled, knowing he had no idea what he was walking into. This was just the beginning. They thought they could get away with their lies, but they were about to see how wrong they were. A new generation had arrived. 3 generations. It was their time. Daniel fell for my bait without hesitation. Over the next week, I drew him deeper into a project for a supposed high-profile landscaping client. It was entirely fabricated, an elaborate web of fake meetings, pointless tasks, and traps carefully designed to highlight his incompetence. Meanwhile, Jessica carried on with her lies, sneaking off to meet Daniel while claiming she was swamped with work. She had no idea I was collecting every piece of evidence: photos, screenshots of their texts, thanks to a spy app I installed on her phone, and even audio recordings of their little rendezvous. Then came the big day. I set up a meeting between Daniel, myself, and a group of clients I created with the help of some business associates who owed me favors. The setting was perfect: a high-end conference room in downtown Phoenix. Daniel arrived dressed to impress, grinning like he was about to land the deal of a lifetime. What he didn't know was that I'd prepped my clients to ask specific questions designed to expose his lack of expertise. The meeting began, and it wasn't long before Daniel was floundering. He stumbled through basic concepts, contradicted himself, and tried to bluff his way through technical questions. My fake clients expressed doubt and frustration, feeding his panic. By the end of the meeting, Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. "I think we've heard enough," one of the fake clients said, standing up. "Thanks for your time, Mr. Daniels, but we'll be going in a different direction." The look on Daniel's face was priceless. He mumbled an apology, glanced at me for support, and scurried out of the room. Once he was gone, I shook hands with my accomplices and thanked them for their stellar performance. But the real climax was waiting at home. That evening, when Jessica walked in, I was sitting in the living room, calm and composed. On the coffee table was an envelope stuffed with every piece of evidence I'd collected: photos of her and Daniel together, screenshots of their messages, and a USB drive with audio recordings of their cozy chats. Her face went pale as she opened it and started flipping through the contents. "Knew," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I knew everything, Jessica. I just needed you to see what kind of man you threw our marriage away for." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes darted between me and the damning evidence in front of her. I didn't give her a chance to explain. "Daniel embarrassed himself today," I continued. "I set him up, and he proved to everyone in that room exactly what he is: an incompetent fraud. He used you, Jessica, just like you used me." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. I stood, looking down at her as I delivered my final words. "I'm leaving tonight. You can keep the house, the cars, everything. I don't want any of it. But you're going to have to live with the choices you made and the mess you created." And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her alone with the shattered remnants of what we once had. The suicides, banners, and the broken mirrors. I mean, just look how fat and stupid you are. Walking out of that house felt like both a liberation and a heartbreak. I didn't look back, and I ignored Jessica's frantic calls and texts that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel across town and turned off my phone. I needed to disconnect, to give myself the space to process everything and figure out what the next chapter of my life would look like. Jessica, on the other hand, wasted no time scrambling to fix the wreckage. When I finally turned my phone back on the next morning, it was flooded with dozens of messages from her. They swung wildly between apologies, pleas for reconciliation, and attempts to shift the blame. Jessica: "Michael, please, we can fix this. It was a mistake." Jessica: You don't understand. I was feeling so lonely. Jessica, I only did it because you've been so distant lately. Or distant? That was a slap in the face. I'd spent months pouring every ounce of energy into keeping our marriage alive, planning date nights, leaving her sweet notes, doing everything I could to make her happy, all while she was sneaking around with my so-called friend. I didn't bother responding. There was no point. The time for words had passed. Within days, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel had completely ghosted Jessica. After his public humiliation during the fake client meeting, his bruised ego must have been too much to handle. He stopped returning her texts and calls, leaving her to deal with the fallout alone. Good. They deserved each other. But the ripples of her betrayal didn't stop there. Jessica's lies started unraveling in other areas of her life. Word of the affairs spread at her workplace, likely thanks to a few choice photos I anonymously sent to one of her colleagues. The marketing firm where she worked had a strict no fraternization policy. While Daniel wasn't employed there, the scandal was enough to tarnish her professional reputation. She was suddenly the talk of the office, and her previously perfect image began to crack. That's when Jessica tried reaching out again. This time, her tone shifted from apologetic to desperate. Jessica, Michael, I need you to stop. You're ruining my life. Jessica, I know I made a mistake, but you're being cruel. This isn't fair. Fair? I actually laughed when I read that. Fair was me trusting her completely while she lied to my face for months. Fair was me working tirelessly to keep our marriage strong while she betrayed me. She didn't know me as well as she thought if she believed guilt would win me over. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was regaining control of my life. I wasn't drowning anymore. I'd taken what could have destroyed me and flipped the script. Now, I was free to move forward. But Jessica's spiral was far from over. The fallout had only just begun. It didn't take long for Jessica to realize Daniel wasn't the knight in shining armor she'd imagined. A few days after I left, I got a message from Sarah, a mutual friend who always seemed to have the latest gossip. "Did you hear about Jessica and Daniel?" she asked, her voice dripping with curiosity. "No, but I'm sure you're about to tell me," I replied dryly. Apparently, Daniel had completely ghosted Jessica. After his humiliating failure at the fake client meeting, he blocked her on everything. Phone, social media, you name it. According to Sarah, Daniel had been using Jessica all along, not just for the affair, but also for her professional connections. Once his reputation took a hit, he discarded her like yesterday's news. It didn't surprise me. I'd seen through Daniel long before Jessica ever did. Still, there was a grim satisfaction in knowing she was finally seeing him for who he really was. She had thrown away our marriage for a man who never respected her in the first place. A week later, Jessica reached out to me again. This time, it wasn't anger or blame. It was pure desperation. Jessica, Michael, please, I need to talk to you. It's important. Jessica, I know I don't deserve it, but I really need your help." I ignored her messages, but my curiosity got the better of me. I reached out to Sarah to see if she'd heard anything new. She didn't disappoint. "Oh, you're gonna love this," Sarah said with a laugh. "Jessica found out Daniel's been seeing someone else the whole time they were together. Apparently, he was juggling her and some girl from his gym. It's a mess." I couldn't help but laugh. The irony was too perfect. Jessica had destroyed our marriage for Daniel, only to discover she was just another fling to him. I might have felt bad for her if she hadn't betrayed me so completely. But Jessica wasn't done trying to pull me back into her life. She started showing up at places she knew I'd be. My favorite coffee shop, the gym, even a bar where I occasionally hung out with friends. Spouse, each time she'd corner me, pleading for another chance, swearing she'd learned her lesson. "Michael, I was stupid," she said one night, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what I was thinking. I ruined everything, but I can fix it. We can fix it." I looked her in the eye, my voice steady. "You didn't just ruin our marriage, Jessica. You ruined my trust, and that's something I'm never getting back." She broke down completely, sobbing as I turned and walked away. I didn't stay to comfort her. I had nothing left to give. Jessica had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. As far as I was concerned, my chapter in her story was over. After that last encounter with Jessica, I felt an overwhelming sense of finality. It wasn't relief exactly. I still carried a lot of anger, hurt, and even some sadness, but it was a step toward closure. For the first time in months, I could focus on myself without the weight of her lies hanging over me. I threw myself into my landscaping business. Work became my escape, my therapy. I started taking on bigger projects, and within weeks, I landed a contract with a local resort in Scottsdale. It was the kind of opportunity that could set my business up for years, and I poured everything I had into making it a success. At the same time, I started reconnecting with friends I'd drifted away from during my marriage. It felt good to have people in my corner again, people who reminded me that life didn't end with betrayal. My best friend Mark even dragged me out to a hiking group he joined. He didn't think I'd enjoy it, but being out on those Arizona trails with nothing but the desert and the mountains gave me a peace I hadn't felt in ages. One day, while on one of those hikes, I realized something. I didn't miss Jessica, not really. I missed the idea of the life we were supposed to have together, but the woman I'd loved wasn't the same person who had betrayed me. Letting go of that ideal was hard, but it was necessary. Meanwhile, Jessica wasn't doing so well. Word got around that she'd been let go from her job. I don't know if it was because of the affair or if the firm just didn't want the drama, but either way, she was struggling. Daniel's disappearing act left her isolated, and she didn't have many friends willing to stick by her after everything that happened. A mutual acquaintance told me she'd moved back in with her parents in Tucson. I didn't feel bad for her. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I thought I was finally done with her for good. But then, just as I was starting to rebuild my life, Jessica pulled one last unexpected move. It was a quiet Thursday evening when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message made my stomach churn. Unknown. Michael, it's me. We need to talk. It's important. Please don't ignore this. I knew it was Jessica. Against my better judgment, I replied, "Me? There's nothing left to say. Please stop contacting me." Her reply came almost immediately. "Jessica, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. It's not about us, I swear." The air left the room. My first instinct was to call her bluff. Jessica had lied before, and I wasn't about to take her word for something this big. The timing. It was possible. We hadn't been intimate much in those final months, but there were one or two moments. If she was telling the truth, this was more complicated than I ever imagined. Me. Are you sure? How do I know you're not lying about this too? Jessica. I swear on everything, Michael. I found out last week. I'll take whatever test you want, but it's yours. Please, just hear me out. I didn't know what to think. If she was lying, this was a new low, even for her. But if she wasn't, I couldn't ignore the possibility of a child. This wasn't about Jessica anymore. It was about something bigger. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop the next day. When I saw her, she looked different. Tired. Drained. Almost fragile. She slid a printout across the table, a doctor's confirmation of her pregnancy along with the timeline. It matched. She wasn't lying. "Michael, I know I don't deserve anything from you," she said, her voice trembling, "but I don't want to do this alone. I want to do what's right for the baby." I stared at the paper, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to walk away and let her deal with the consequences of her choices, but another part, the part that believed in responsibility, knew I couldn't abandon my child. "I'll support the baby," I said finally, my voice firm. "But this doesn't change anything between us. We're done, Jessica." She nodded, tears streaking her face. "I understand. Thank you." That was the last time I saw her for a while. We worked out a co-parenting plan through lawyers, keeping everything as civil and distant as possible. It wasn't easy, but I stayed focused on what mattered, the baby. The child deserved stability, even if Jessica and I had failed as a couple. Months have passed, and I'm still adjusting to this new reality. Jessica and I will never be close, but we've managed to keep things cordial for the baby's sake. I've thrown myself into my business, rebuilding my life, and preparing to be a dad. Life rarely turns out the way you expect, but you play the hand you're dealt. And in case anyone's wondering, no, Daniel never showed his face again. Good riddance. That said, thank you so much for watching. If you're still there, I really appreciate you for that. Please subscribe and check my other stories. See ya.